Alright guys, thank you so much for getting straight to work and filling out your KWLS chart as it says so on the board. Now I want you to turn to your partner and share your K's and W's with them about what you know and what you would like to know about polymers, today's topic. So you have 60 seconds. Go ahead. Alright, so now that you guys have had a chance to share, please hold on to your KWLS charts and you will be completing them and handing them in for your exit ticket for today. So as you have already gathered, we are going to be learning about polymers today and the properties of these polymers. And at the end of today's class, you will be working with your partner to create a bouncy ball. Everyone's going to have their own bouncy ball to take home, but it's very important that you guys pay attention to what you're about to hear because you will not be receiving step-by-step instructions as to how to make them. You will have to learn through trial by error and using what you already know. Alright, so we're going to take a moment to talk about what we already know about polymers. And after we've generated all these responses, you guys did a great job with that. We are now going to talk about some more of the basic properties of a polymer. So here is our PowerPoint presentation on that. Alright, now that we've gone through this PowerPoint and you guys have done a great job answering our review questions, please take a moment to fill out a couple of the L's on your KWLS chart. Alright, and now it's time to go into the lab. Each lab station has the materials necessary to build your bouncy ball. So we will be going to each person will be going to your station. Make sure that you are writing down each of your steps in the lab because this is what you'll be handing in. You need to record each step, and with 15 minutes left at the end of class, we will all have bouncy balls to take home and share what steps we used to create this ball. However, we will be using food coloring and borax in this experiment because we don't want you to stain your clothes. Make sure that you are using gloves and a lab apron. So, using what you already know about polymers, go ahead and try and make a bouncy ball out of these materials that you have in front of you.
Okay, so I'm going to be demonstrating the techniques to make the bouncy ball as is given in the directions. Students will be receiving 2 cups, 1 bottle of glue, a stirring utensil, I'm using a fork, a red bag that has cornstarch in it, a blue bag that has borax in it, and some food coloring, and then they'll also be measuring things. They're also going to receive paper towels for their hands during this experiment. Okay, so students are not going to be told how much of each thing to be putting in or how to mix them together. So they'll be figuring that out with themselves, and so each group will end up with different results. The materials actually call for 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, which is what I have in my red bag, half a teaspoon of borax, which is in my blue bag, 4 tablespoons of warm water, which is in my cup, and a tablespoon of glue. So I also have my tablespoon measurer. So, the directions say to mix the borax, the warm water, and the cornstarch into a cup together, separate from the glue and the food coloring. Okay. So there's my borax in my cup. And in goes my lots of cornstarch. 3 tablespoons seems like a lot when you're doing it, but it's because some of it isn't actually going to go into the ball itself. Some of it's excess. Okay, so I have those put together. Now I'm going to put my 1 tablespoon of glue into my other bottle. And I also have wax paper down so my mom doesn't kill me. Students would be wearing aprons to keep the food coloring off themselves, and gloves as well. There's really no super dangerous chemicals that we're working with here. All we can hope is that some student doesn't try to eat the glue. Okay, so there's 1 tablespoon of glue. I'm going to use this to scrape it out a little bit so that we are actually getting the whole tablespoon. Well, as much of the whole tablespoon as we can get. Okay, and then I'm going to put 4 or 5 drops of food coloring in. This is just to make the ball have some color rather than having a plain white. So then I mix that together. And you can see this is a green glue material. So it also says that you need to mix this up well because the cornstarch settles to the bottom, and as you start to mix it, you'll feel that. It's really thick on the bottom, and that's the cornstarch, and as you stir it, it thins out. So get it all mixed up. It's kind of more like a paste, it's like a glue almost. Okay, so that's all mixed up with the warm water. The next thing that you're going to do is pour this mixture into the glue. So I'm pouring that in. Okay, and now I'm going to mix this together. And I'm going to stir it until it becomes a little bit rubbery. And it's also important to remember that not all students are going to mix the materials this way, so their results might be a little bit different. Also, not all students will use the same amount of glue or the same amount of cornstarch or borax, so that's kind of part of the fun of this. And they're going to be doing a trial and error, recording all their steps and measurements as they go until they have successfully created a ball that bounces at least a little bit. Woo! Got my face. Okay, so when you're doing this, you'll notice that you get a blob, like literally a blob. I would recommend taking all jewelry off, as I've already done. And you're going, at first it's going to be really sticky and yucky. And that is what the paper towels are for. Because if you keep your hands clean as you're doing this, it goes a lot better. I squeeze it a little bit too because it helps get some of the excess moisture out. Okay, so it's a little sticky still, but it is starting to bounce. It's not sticking to the table anymore. And we have a bouncy ball. It's not the greatest bouncy ball, but the idea here is to show the polymers in action. So in the end, the students will compare their methods to that one that I just described and to each other's. And they'll also discuss the properties of polymers as a class. So it gets bouncier the more you roll it. So it just depends on how much time the students have.
Alright guys, thank you so much for working hard and gathering up your materials. You did a great job cleaning up your stations. So, what are some ways that each group created your bouncy ball? What are some of the steps that you used? Alright, thank you for sharing. And what about your group? Okay. And how were some of the steps different, or how were they similar to each other? Thank you for sharing. Alright, so based on what we have learned today, what are some properties of silicon and its polymers? Alright, so before we leave today, be sure that you complete the L and S sections of your KWLS chart. Please leave them in the basket on your way out the door as your exit ticket, and you are free to go.